As world leaders gather in New York this week for the United Nations General Assembly, there's been a lot of talk about the refugee crisis. And crisis right now seems an understatement. At the end of last year, more than 65 million people were refugees, according to the UN. Not since the end of World War II have so many men, women and children been forced to flee their homes. From the US president on down, there have been calls for action and warnings of consequences if there is a failure to act.
This crisis is a test of our common humanity. Whether we give in to suspicion and fear and build walls, or whether we see ourselves in another. Those girls being trafficked and tortured, they could be our daughters. That little boy on the beach could be our son or our grandson. And we cannot avert our eyes or turn our backs. To slam the door in the face of these families would betray our deepest values.
We are witnessing the worst humanitarian and refugee crisis since the Second World War. Millions are fleeing armed conflict and the brutal effects of war. Others are escaping violence, persecution, and systematic violations of their human rights.
But beyond the words, the question remains, what is anything being done to try and solve what is a massive but slow-moving disaster? Salil Shetty is the Secretary General of Amnesty International. He joins us now from New York. So, Salil, after all the talk, what's the end result here? Where is all of this heading right now?
Well, I mean, Amnesty International's assessment is that what we've had in the last day in the summit is really quite a collective and spectacular failure. As your commentary mentioned, the refugees are dying in large numbers and they're living in appalling poverty. So the need is massive, and they're also living in huge uncertainty. But the response from the leaders was close to nothing. We haven't had, in the main refugee summit of the United Nations, we haven't had a single measurable, binding new target.
In her first appearance at the United Nations General Assembly, the British Prime Minister Theresa May said refugees must claim asylum in the first safe country they reach, and she said this as well. Please listen to the British Prime Minister.
We need to improve the ways we distinguish between refugees fleeing persecution and economic migrants. This in turn will help us target support for those refugees who need it most.
Is there an argument here for distinguishing between those who are fleeing violence and those who some say are simply looking for a better job?
Well, John, I've spent a lot of time in the camps and the borders of Syria and Lebanon and Turkey. I've met a lot of women, children, and really I've not heard even one of them saying that they want to go to Europe. Every one of them wants to go back to Syria. They want to go back to where they came from. Being a refugee is not a lifestyle choice. It's people who are, the vast majority are those who are fleeing from war and persecution. So that's really not it's not an honest argument and not an honest statement from leaders. And this is one of the big problems we're facing, that, you know, you have leaders concocting all sorts of mistruths, and this is why, as far as Amnesty International is concerned, we are about to launch a campaign called I Welcome Refugees. If our leaders fail us, that's, you know, we're used to that. Let the people stand up. And all the surveys we've done have shown that the majority of the population, even in the richest countries, do welcome refugees. Often they don't know the facts. They are fed with fear and misinformation.
Well, with that in mind, President Obama talked about the values that refugees can bring. Listen to the president.
And we've seen in America hard-working, patriotic refugees serve in our military and start new businesses and help revitalize communities. I believe refugees can make us stronger.
Why is that being forgotten here and seems to be replaced with outright animosity?
Well, I think it's a leadership failure. I mean, take a country like Canada, right? Now, Stephen Harper, the previous Prime Minister, for 9 years told us that Canadians don't want refugees, they're a security risk, they're going to take our jobs away. And with Justin Trudeau, the new Prime Minister, it's not like overnight the people of Canada change their opinion. It's just the leaders who kind of pretend, you know, portray a particular opinion. Same with Merkel and Germany. Germany's taken 1 million refugees, and today we've heard some commitments of a few 100,000, few tens of thousands. So I do think it boils down to a leadership choice, and, you know, we have to put these things in perspective. A country like Lebanon, Lebanon, with a 4 million population, has 1 million refugees. So for the whole of Europe, with 400, 500 million population, for them to say they cannot even take a few million refugees is simply not true.
There has been a lot of publicity in the past 24 hours or so around a tweet from Donald Trump Jr. comparing refugees to Skittles, warning some of those Skittles could actually kill you. What is your reaction to that?
We should be embracing them. That's the only way in which you can isolate those who are, who are really going with extreme violence as the solution. So those who are fleeing from those who are using extreme violence, if you don't embrace them, you're only strengthening the hands of those who are perpetrating this kind of violent action. So I think it's absolutely skewed, these kinds of, I saw the tweet as well. It's just shocking.
Salil, we'll leave it there. Appreciate everything you've said, your insight. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.